Hey everybody, Paul here from Warden's Farm. It's time to start putting on candy boards. Late December, early January. And then the bees should have enough to get them through until February. So I'm going to show you some of the basic ingredients that I use to make the candy boards. And you can modify it with other vitamins and things like that that you need to do. But some of the basic ingredients are this. One of the first basic ingredients you're going to need is sugar. It takes 10 pounds of sugar to make one of my candy boards, and that's a 25-pound sack of sugar. So 2 of them can make 5 candy boards. Then you're going to need the candy boards themselves. As you can see, I got a bunch of them here. And what do they consist of? They're basically made of wood. They have a board in the center that keeps the candy up off the bottom board so that the bees can get to it without crushing them. They also have exit holes. That way, if the bees get up in there, they can find their way out. And I got it on all the hives. Some of them probably need to be cleaned up a little bit, which is no big deal. But they're all basically the same. These blue ones are the same. But this board, I'll be needing to switch and put on the bottom because I don't like the way that's put in there. And in these, I'll put either newspaper, or when I order the wax foundation, it comes with paper on it. I usually take that paper and I'll line it across the bottom because that's where all the sugar will go on top of. The bees can eat through it to get to the candy. But other ingredients you're going to need: honey bee healthy is a source of bee pollen. As you can see, I use the Ultra bee pollen here. I also add a little bit of apple cider vinegar because that will help keep the candy lasting longer. Some of the other things that I would add to the candy boards is Hive Alive, but I don't have any. I ran out from using it in the sugar water mixtures that I just added to the bees a little bit ago. So I'm not going to put that in. I'm just going to use the Honey Bee Healthy, the bee pollen, and sugar this year, as well as the apple cider vinegar. So let me show you how I mix this up. That way we can get this going and show you how I do it. Okay, so one of the first things we got to do is make sure our candy board is ready to receive the candy. Even before you mix it up, I like to make sure that it's ready. And when you order beeswax, they send you paper that is on the beeswax to protect it, basically. And it basically looks, just like that. Simple little paper, smells like beeswax. It's perfect for what you want to do. And you can just slide them right in. This is a 10 frame candy board that I'm making. And I'll go ahead and probably cut this one in half just to make it easier. There we go. And put it in there. Have a little bit of overhang on each side. And that's the basic thing that will keep the candy inside the board. After you put your paper inside your candy board, you can use this, you can use parchment paper, you can use newspaper, whatever you've got on hand, but something that the bees can chew through easily. Then in each corner, I put a little block in there because these are going to come out later. And let me turn this around, get it right. This will go up in this corner, this one up in this corner, and then this one right here by the hole that's there for the bees to climb through. And now this board is ready for the candy to be added. So we have our mixing bucket right here. I already have 5 pounds of sugar measured out here. So that will go into the bucket. So now that I have 5 pounds of sugar in here, we got to measure out another 5 pounds on the scale. And I go in 5-pound increments just because this is something small and easy. It's easy to handle. If you got something that can measure out 10 pounds of sugar, go ahead and use that. And it doesn't take long to get 5 pounds. And why do I mix it in 10-pound increments? It is a whole lot easier to mix up 5 pounds of, as you were 10 pounds of sugar on a candy board than mix it all up and have it harden in the bucket ahead of time. Because days like today where it's warm, it's going to harden pretty quick. So right now we got 10 pounds of sugar inside there. Then in this dry mixture, we're going to add, 2 years ago, I used to add a half a cup of bee pollen. But because I want to have healthier bees on cold days where they can't go out and get pollen, now I add 1/3 of a cup of pollen. Gives them just that little bit more pollen that the bees can use as food inside their hive. So I take 1/3 cup. This is the bee pollen. This is what it looks like. And if you have something easy to knock it off with, just go ahead and knock off the excess. You can add it right to it. It doesn't matter. It's going to do nothing but help the bees. Dump that right into your sugar mixture. Before you add any liquid to it, go ahead and take your hands. It's going to get dirty. I get better mixture using my hands than using a drill or something else. I like to use fingers because I like having hands on. So you just stick your hands in and you start mixing in the sugar. So as you can see, the bee pollen's in there, the sugar's in there. And if you get sugar that has clumps in it, if it's been stored a while where it starts getting clumps, go ahead and break the clumps up during this stage. You don't want clumps because it's not going to mix well, and you don't want clumps of the sugar in there that's not mixed up, and it'll make it harder to break apart anyways when you try to add it into your candy board. So you just keep mixing, and I stir the bucket as I go, and you can see inside here the mixture's starting to turn slightly yellow, and you got to reach way down in the corners because that bee pollen will work its way in to the corners, and that way you get it mixed out. As you can see, yep, there's a chunk of bee pollen right there. So just look for it, mix it in. Once you know it's all mixed in well, the sugar will have a slightly yellow hue to it. Shouldn't have any clumps. Once you get it all mixed in there, I got bees in the pollen. Let me get that bee out of there. I got to close that up or else it'll constantly come in here. But you can see the color of the sugar has a slight yellow tint to it now. So the next thing that you want to do, put that to the side. You want 10 ounces of water. 10 ounces of water is 1 1/4 cups of water, if I'm right. Yes, it is. And then inside of that, you need to add a tablespoon of Honey Bee Healthy, and you could add a tablespoon of either white or apple cider vinegar. I'm using apple cider vinegar now because it's organic, and it's supposed to be better for the bees using apple cider vinegar. You take your water, and you have 10 ounces of water, which is equal to 1 1/4 cups of water. Then you want to add Honey Bee Healthy, When you start mixing this up into the sugar, it will draw bees because it has a minty smell to it. So we're getting down into a teaspoon of Honey Bee Healthy. You mix that right into the water. And I always mix it in a little bit to make sure I empty out the spoon, or as you were the measuring spoon. And then make sure to put your lid back on. Set that to the side. Get your apple cider vinegar. If you're using apple cider vinegar, you'll notice that you get a lot of sediment on the bottom. So go ahead, shake it up. A tablespoon of vinegar. And that will help preserve your candy board for a longer period of time. Get that out the way. Now go ahead and mix it all up. Now that everything's mixed up, it's time to add it to your sugar. Now when you start adding it, I add about half of it at first. And then take your hand and you gotta start mixing it. Now when you mix it, it'll look like this, and it'll look like you can't, no way, mix up all this into the sugar. And you just break up the clumps you get and keep stirring. And don't worry, it's gonna mix up and it's gonna stick together. And when it does, it'll harden nicely into your candy board. After it's all mixed up, and you'll be able to tell when you got it all mixed up. You got to just keep breaking up all the chunks, mix it up, and once you think you got most of these big chunks like that broke up, you can add the rest of your water. And you'll add it, and then just mix it all together. Yeah, I see the bees coming in. Should have closed that garage door. And you, like I said, you'll keep getting these big chunks. That's too wet. So you got to just mix it all up. Reach down in there, pull up all that wet stuff, and mix it with the dry stuff that's hidden in the corners. And this is why I like using my hand, because when you use a drill and an attachment, like a mortar mixer or something like that, you can't get the consistency feel that you want. You can see it, but I like to feel it. I like to know what I'm doing, and I like doing everything by hand anyways. Go on, Mr. B. We'll get this later on. Now putting it into the candy board, you can see everything's in place, and I take it and I just take handfuls of it at first and dump it in it. Don't worry about spreading it out just yet. That's going to happen, trust me. Put it where you know the paper could come apart, just like that. So now you can start spreading it about. Move it down into the ends by the wood. That way it'll keep the wooden. And start spreading it around evenly, because this is going to sit overnight to harden. And I got a lot more of these I got to make. And all 10 pounds will end up in this one candy board. And I'll pack it in around the wood. Keep that wood in place. And this is going to harden together nicely. And you just start making it get nice and even. Push down the sugar along the edges. And get it all spread in there nice and evenly. And you can see as you get it in, you can pat it and it's starting to stick together just like you want it to, where it's not going to be too wet, too loose. This side here needs a little more. There's one clump. That's a little too wet, but that's okay. We'll put in the rest of the sugar. Make sure we got it all out of here. You can see it's all out. All of it's in here. And you just pat it down, let it dry. And this will be good for the bees for when I go to use it. Now the blocks I leave in until it gets hard. So as you can see, it's really easy to make your own candy boards. You can go out and buy them, but it's kind of fun to make yourself, and you get the sense of everything that you're mixing together and how well they are. And you know it's all here for the bees. Again, just in case you missed it at the beginning of the video, you want to mix 1 1/4 cup of water, which is 10 ounces of water, a tablespoon of vinegar, be it white or cider vinegar, and a teaspoon of Honey Bee Healthy. If you want to go a little heavier, go right ahead. It's not going to hurt your bees. You mix all that together in the water, put it on standby. You take your 10 pounds of sugar, and again, I'm using 1/3 cup of pollen this year. And I am using Ultra Bee pollen this year. You have different brands out there that you can buy. Buy what's easiest for you. Amazon sells a lot of this stuff. You can even order your sugar from Walmart online and get that too. So you get all this together, put your 10 pounds of sugar in your bucket, mix it with your 1/3 cup of pollen. Once it's mixed well, you add your water, half of it, into the sugar, stir it by hand, or if you want to use a mixing tool, go right ahead. I like using my hands. I like getting my hands dirty. Anything hands-on for the bees I like to do. Then once that's mixed up well and you get all them big clumps all broken down, add the other half of your sugar, or I'm sorry, add the other half of your water. Then once that's all mixed up, then you can put it into your candy board. And as you can see, I have a lot more to do.